The yellow tractor powered through the pumpkin patch, its blades splintering gourds into orange mist. David Cole pulled his truck to the edge of his 30-acre farm and found a battlefield.
What have you done? This crop was 3 days from harvest.
Relax, David. The HOA authorized a weed mitigation. This mess attracted rats. I have the easement right here, signed and legal. Face it, your eyesore is gone.
A tattered county food bank partner banner lay crushed in the mud, its letters barely legible through orange pulp.
You just destroyed over 100,000 pounds of food meant for 11,000 families.
Now we have a clean view. That's what the neighborhood wants. That's what matters.
That easement is a lie. I have every deed record back to my grandfather. This isn't over.
David stood in the wreckage, the weight of the lost harvest pressing on his shoulders, while Patricia walked away without looking back. For 30 years, this field had been the county's largest single-source donation for Thanksgiving meals.
Every pumpkin, every squash, it all went to families who'd go without. My grandfather started this.
Patricia Whitmore had been filing complaints almost weekly, each one citing vermin and blight.
You're bringing rats into this neighborhood, David. The board is going to shut you down.
This land feeds 11,000 families, Patricia. The county food bank depends on it.
I don't care if it feeds the whole state. It's an eyesore and a health hazard.
She never cared about the families. She just wanted it gone. And now it is.
The food bank's entire holiday supply had been plowed into the dirt. 48 volunteers would arrive tomorrow to find nothing but mud.
They'll be here at sunrise with trucks and crates. What do I tell them?
He had no answer. Only the weight of 100,000 pounds of silence. Before sunrise, David called Lisa Monroe to break the news no food bank director ever wants to hear.
David, tell me you're calling about the extra trucks we requested.
The patch is gone, Lisa. Patricia Whitmore hired a crew and they plowed everything under.
That's not funny. Not today of all days. You can't be serious.
Within the hour, Lisa stood at the edge of the devastation, and the color drained from her face.
Oh God. David, the numbers. We promised 11,000 families a full holiday meal. We can't just call them and say sorry.
David knelt and scooped up a handful of pulverized pumpkin, the soil still damp from the morning dew.
What can we do? She had an easement, didn't she?
The document she showed me looked forged. I'm going to find out if it's real. I won't let her bury this.
He drove home and pulled every deed, survey, and tax receipt from his grandfather's leather ledger, determined to find the truth. David held the so-called HOA easement up to the kitchen window, squinting at the dates and signatures.
This signature doesn't match any board member I know. The date is from a meeting that never happened. This easement is a forgery, Patricia. Your clean view is built on a lie.
How dare you insult this board? Our lawyer verified every page. You're just a bitter farmer.
I have the original county records. Witnesses who were at that meeting. You're finished.
I'm calling the sheriff. You're trespassing at a private board meeting.
Deputy Morris arrived within minutes, his cruiser blocking the HOA driveway.
Mrs. Whitmore says you're causing a disturbance. You need to leave.
Officer, she forged this easement. My farm feeds the county food bank. She destroyed it illegally.
That's a civil matter. Right now you're on private property. Go home before I have to cite you.
By morning, the local paper had spun the destruction into a feature. HOA clears ugly overgrowth.
This was about community standards. That field attracted vermin and lowered property values.
She's spinning this like a neighborhood improvement while families go hungry. Hello? I'm David Cole. That article is full of lies. The patch fed the food bank.
The reporter on the other end asked if he had proof. David stared at the forged easement and said yes. Across town, Lisa opened the food bank doors to a crowd of volunteers with empty crates and no pumpkins.
We don't have a shipment. The whole crop was destroyed. I don't know what we're going to do.
A young volunteer stepped forward, holding a photo of last year's harvest on his phone.
That field fed my own cousin's family. I promise you we are not giving up. But right now, we need a miracle.
David held the forged document tight. The truth was his only weapon, but the court of public opinion was already stacked against him. 2 days later, Rebecca Lang from Channel 9 arrived at the food bank with her camera crew.
Mrs. Monroe, tell our viewers what this field meant before it was destroyed. It was the backbone of our Thanksgiving drive. 11,000 families depending on us. All gone.
Lisa's voice broke as the camera panned across the empty loading dock, where volunteers used to stack mountains of orange gourds. An hour later, Rebecca drove to the HOA office and knocked on Patricia Whitmore's door.
This is a private organization. I have nothing to say to you. I have a copy of the easement. The signatures don't match the board's official records.
Patricia's face drained of color. She stepped back and slammed the door in the reporter's face. David met Rebecca on the sidewalk and carefully handed over the original document.
I'll run this. If it's a fraud, the whole county will know by tomorrow's broadcast.
The evening broadcast opened with drone footage of the ruined field before cutting to Lisa, her eyes swollen.
We compared the easement signatures. A forensic document examiner confirms this document was never signed by the board.
Patricia Whitmore watched the segment from her Range Rover, her knuckles white around the steering wheel. By morning, the clip had 2 million views. Comment sections flooded with outrage, demands for Patricia's removal. Protesters gathered outside the HOA office, holding signs that read "Justice for the Hungry." Inside, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting. Patricia tried to gavel them into silence.
This is all a smear campaign by that farmer. We did nothing wrong.
A board member stood and slid a printed copy of the forensic report across the table.
You can't do this to me. I built this community.
They voted to call for her resignation. Patricia stormed out, but the damage was done, and it was spreading beyond her control. A cold wind swept across the ruined field as David walked the rows, picking through debris for anything salvageable. His boot struck metal. Under a mat of pulverized vine lay a crumpled sign, its green lettering barely visible.
USDA Cooperative Research Site, Blight-Resistant Cultivar Project. What in the world?
David dialed the number on the sign. A crisp voice answered, then fell silent when he described the field. Within 2 hours, Dr. Elaine Park stood at the edge of the devastation, her tablet scanning the wreckage.
Mr. Cole, this was a federally funded project. Years of genetic research for pathogen resistance. It's irreplaceable.
I had no idea. The food bank partnership was all I knew. What does this mean for Patricia?
Whoever did this is facing federal charges. The value of this lost stock is in the millions, and the liability isn't just civil. I'm opening an investigation immediately. The USDA will make sure this isn't swept under the rug.
David stared at the broken sign in his hands, the weight of a federal case now pressing down on top of a hungry county.
20 years of genetic work have been destroyed. There is no backup seed bank for this strain.
Then it's not just the food bank. This is a permanent loss for all farmers.
That evening, national news broke the story. HOA chair accused of destroying federal agricultural research.
Federal charges? It was just a pumpkin patch. This can't be happening.
Patricia, say nothing to anyone. The USDA is not some local board. They don't settle for apologies.
David opened an official USDA press release. The destroyed cultivars represented $4.2 million in federal grants.
Under the Agricultural Protection Act, the penalty for destroying federal research property can be triple its value.
Patricia tore through her house, shoving papers into a bag, her breaths ragged and panicked.
If they prove you knew about the USDA project, the agricultural terrorism charge alone carries a decade in federal prison.
David stood alone with the crumpled sign, the civil case now the smallest part of a storm that was just beginning. At dawn, 2 FBI agents stood on Patricia Whitmore's doorstep, a search warrant held flat against the glass.
What is this? You can't just barge in here.
They moved past her into the home office, bagging a laptop and HOA filing cabinets without hesitation.
I had nothing to do with the plowing. It was the weed company. They misinterpreted my request.
Across town, Brad Simmons sat in a cramped interrogation room, Deputy Morris across the table.
She told me she had authority. that the easement was solid. I just did the job.
Did you ever see the actual signed easement?
She showed me a paper, but she didn't let me keep it. Said it was confidential.
Patricia's computer contained the original forged document template and emails directing the crew to clear everything, topsoil included. As the agents carried out her hard drives, Patricia's last defense crumbled into dust. 3 days after the FBI search, David, Lisa, and Dr. Park stood before a packed room of reporters and community members.
We filed a civil suit today against Patricia Whitmore for $1.8 million in food bank losses, plus punitive damages.
That money would have fed 11,000 families this Thanksgiving. We intend to recover every cent. The USDA is pursuing separate federal charges. The genetic loss alone is valued at over $12 million. Mrs. Whitmore claims she was acting within HOA rights. What's your response?
The easement she used was forged, as the FBI now knows. She never had any right to touch our land.
A volunteer in the crowd held up a child's drawing of a pumpkin with the words, "Thank you," scrawled in crayon.
We won't let that gratitude be buried. Not while we can still fight.
The room erupted in applause, and outside a crowd had gathered with signs, their support now a wall behind David. Patricia Whitmore watched the press conference from her lawyer's office, her face ashen as the first federal indictments were drafted. The next morning, a thin envelope from Keller's office sat on David's kitchen table.
$150,000 to drop everything? She thinks money can silence me.
He tossed the crumpled offer into the trash without a second thought. Across town, Patricia Whitmore paced in Keller's office, her desperation boiling over.
If the food bank revises its loss, the civil suit collapses. I'll make it worth their while.
She dialed Lisa Monroe's direct line, unaware that Lisa had a voice recorder app active on her phone.
This is Lisa Monroe. Who am I speaking to? Mrs. Monroe, I'm prepared to donate $50,000 if you publicly clarify the crop wasn't that valuable. Are you trying to bribe me, Mrs. Whitmore? This conversation is being recorded.
Within the hour, a copy of the recording was in FBI hands. Bribery charges were added to the growing list. That evening, his daughter called. Her voice was thin with worry about the cost of the legal fight.
I won't let this break us, sweetheart. This land fed families. I can't sell out.
But after he hung up, the pile of overdue bills on the kitchen table stared back. 2 nights later, the community organized a fundraiser at the church hall. Hundreds packed the room. Volunteers, farmers, families who had received food.
They're not just donating money. They're giving me a reason to keep going.
One after another, they dropped checks and cash into a basket until it overflowed. Even his daughter, home from college, stood at his side, her earlier fear replaced by pride.
I'll pay every cent back to this community. I promise you that.
By night's end, the legal fund had raised over $80,000. The fight was on. The HOA's nonprofit insurer reviewed the charges and dropped them within 24 hours, leaving the board completely exposed. The remaining board members voted to dissolve the association, then handed all documents to the FBI. Patricia Whitmore watched the news from her living room, then began stuffing a suitcase with panicked hands. She loaded her Range Rover with bags, cash, and a forged passport she'd once used for a canceled vacation.
Just get across the state line. I have enough money to disappear.
But at the county line, a black FBI sedan blocked the road. 2 agents stepped out, badges glinting.
You can't stop me. I've done nothing wrong.
Within seconds, her wrists were cuffed, and the agents read her the list of federal charges. Her Range Rover was towed, and a mugshot was taken before she could even call her lawyer. By nightfall, her home stood empty, a federal seizure notice taped to the front door. The morning after Patricia's arrest, David Cole sat alone on his farmhouse porch, staring at the scarred earth.
Grandpa always said, "You can't harvest hope if you don't plant it." He'd be awful disappointed if I quit now.
He walked to the equipment shed and climbed onto the old tractor, its engine coughing before it roared to life. He drove toward the center of the field, the blade biting into the dry soil. turning over what was ruined to make way for what could grow. After a few passes, he shut off the engine and stepped down, pulling a packet of seeds from his pocket. He knelt and pressed a single seed into the ground, then another, each one a quiet refusal to surrender.
Whatever happens in that courtroom, this land will feed people again. That's a promise I can keep.
The sun sank low, painting the bare patch orange and gold, no longer a crime scene, but a canvas.
I'll be in court next week, but right now, this is enough.
Inside, the stack of unpaid bills still sat on the kitchen table, but somehow it felt smaller now. 1 week later, the federal courtroom was packed. Patricia Whitmore entered in an orange jumpsuit, her pink fleece a distant memory.
Not guilty, Your Honor. This was a misunderstanding, not a crime.
The prosecutor held the forged easement up to the projector. The mismatched signature filled the screen.
We had no backup. The food bank's entire holiday supply was in that field, 11,000 families. The destroyed cultivar was the only line of defense against a blight that could devastate the industry. 20 years of research, gone. The federal government values the loss at over $12 million.
She told me the easement was legitimate. I never questioned it. I just followed her directions. She said clear it all, even the topsoil. I thought we were just doing weed control.
By the time the prosecution rested, even Patricia's own lawyer looked pale. The jury had seen enough. The defense called its only witness. Patricia Whitmore rose from the table, her orange jumpsuit stark against the wood paneling.
Absolutely. Our attorney prepared the easement. I had no reason to doubt its legitimacy. I never saw the signed document, but the board assured me it was filed. I just wanted to improve the neighborhood.
Under cross-examination, her answers fractured. 3 different stories in 10 minutes. In closing, the prosecutor held up the forged document. This is not a mistake. This is a crime.
My client acted in good faith. This is a witch hunt against a volunteer who simply wanted a clean view.
The judge gave instructions and the jury filed out, their faces as blank as fresh paper. David sat in the gallery, his daughter's hand in his. The silence was louder than any testimony.
It was supposed to be a simple cleanup. How did it come to this?
2 hours later, a sharp buzz echoed through the courthouse. The jury had made its decision. The jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. The foreperson held a folded sheet of paper. The room so silent you could hear it crinkle. The foreperson read each count. Criminal mischief, guilty. Forgery, guilty. Witness tampering, guilty. Federal agricultural terrorism, guilty.
No, this can't.
The judge's voice cut through her sobs. Mrs. Whitmore, you abused a position of trust to destroy a charity and federal research. Sentencing would be set for the following week. The scope of the damage demanded careful consideration under federal guidelines. Patricia was led from the courtroom, her orange jumpsuit now a permanent uniform. Her pink fleece days were over.
Grandpa, we did it. They can't take what's ours anymore.
Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but David slipped out a side exit with his daughter, not needing to say a word. The conviction was only the first step. Restitution and civil damages would take months, but the guilty verdict was the foundation. Patricia Whitmore's reign of entitlement had been dismantled in a court of law. The only question left was how much she would pay. The sentencing hearing began. Patricia stood before the judge in a gray prison uniform, her defiance extinguished. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in federal prison, noting the severity of the destruction and fraud. Restitution was set at $3.6 million, half to the food bank, half to the USDA for genetic losses.
This judgment won't feed a single child tonight, but it will help us recover. We thank the court.
Patricia was led away in chains, beginning her first day of a 7-year sentence. David Cole received a $1.8 million civil judgment, forcing liquidation of Patricia's remaining assets. The HOA's nonprofit insurer paid its maximum policy limits before declaring bankruptcy, unable to defend the board's actions. Dr. Park confirmed the USDA portion would fund a new blight resilience program using backup seeds from a partner lab.
This was never about money. My granddaughter will know we stood our ground. That matters more.
He folded the check into his jacket and turned toward the road that led back to his fields. Months after the verdict, the pumpkin patch was a sea of green and orange under a warm autumn sky.
Every seed I pressed into this dirt was a refusal to quit. Now look at it.
Dr. Park and David planted a new USDA sign on the freshly turned soil.
This partnership is official. Cole Farms is now a permanent research site.
Lisa Monroe stood beside David, a truck loaded with pumpkins behind them, the food bank banner proud again. Inside, a crayon drawing hung on the wall, a smiling pumpkin with the words, "Thank you, farmer."
That's why I kept fighting. Not for the money, for this.
At the harvest ceremony, Lisa stood at a podium, a banner declaring 20,000 meals served behind her.
Next year, we're aiming for 30,000. This community refused to be buried.
As the sun set, the patch glowed gold, a testament to resilience and a promise kept. Thanksgiving Day, the community center pulsed with warmth. Long tables filled with food and families who had once feared an empty holiday. David Cole stood behind a serving line in his work flannel, ladling gravy onto plates. People called his name, pressed his hand. Lisa took the microphone. This year we served 20,000 families. That number is only possible because one farmer refused to quit. The room rose to its feet. Applause rolled like thunder off the walls, and David stood frozen, his eyes glistening. His daughter wrapped her arms around him, whispering something that made him finally smile. A young girl tugged at his sleeve and handed him a drawing, a pumpkin patch under a yellow sun with a single word, hope.
Our food bank is expanding. Next year we break ground on a new warehouse. All thanks to this community.
Grandpa once said a single seed can outlast any weed. He was right.
By evening, the hall emptied, but the warmth remained. Leftover pies and a sense that something lasting had been built. David pinned the drawing to the wall beside the food bank banner, then walked out into the autumn air. David walked the long way home, through the pumpkin patch, the rows stretching golden under a fading sun.
His hands were just like yours, Grandpa. Calloused, stubborn, never letting go.
At his truck, he opened the door and pinned the child's drawing to the sun visor. The restored field stretched before him, a quiet testament to seeds that refused to stay buried.
We kept our promise. This land gives life again.
A drone lifted off from the field's edge, its camera pulling skyward into the autumn air. Below, the sign gleamed, Cole Farms and USDA Research. The rows of pumpkins became a patchwork of hope. In the distance, a food bank truck rumbled toward the loading dock, full for another season. David Cole turned the key, the engine hummed, and from the visor, a crayon pumpkin swung gently, watching the road ahead.